Let's be real. Everyone thinks they know Rome. You've seen the gladiators, the togas, and the guys in sandals shouting in the Senate. But Rome wasn't just a city. It was the world's first global superpower. These guys didn't just win wars. They created the entire blueprint for the modern world. They built roads that still exist.
Come along with me in a better place and ease.
Laws we still use, and a military machine that was, at its peak, unstoppable. But how does a tiny village of farmers on a swampy hill become an empire that controls the entire Mediterranean? And more importantly, how do you lose a lead that massive? We are diving deep into the backroom deals, the currency manipulation, and the pure audacity it took to rule the known world, from the ultimate power move to the ultimate collapse. This is Rome for Dummies.
Blah, 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 blah.
Before Rome was an empire with a single main character emperor, it was a republic. This was their version of a democracy, but with a lot more physical combat and high-stakes drama. After kicking out their last king, who was a total nightmare, the Romans were terrified of one guy having all the power. To solve this, they built a system designed to be slow and annoying. They had two consuls who shared power, but they only served for 1 year. Think about that. You've got the keys to the most powerful city in Italy, but you have to give them back in 12 months. Oh, and your co-consul can veto everything you do. It was the ultimate don't get too comfortable strategy. Behind them was the Senate, a group of 300 aristocrats who technically only gave advice, but since they controlled the money and the religion, that advice was basically law. This system worked perfectly when Rome was just a medium-sized player in Italy. But then they started winning. They defeated Carthage in the Punic Wars. And suddenly they were flooded with unimaginable wealth, millions of enslaved people, and massive new territories. This is where the wheels started to come off. The scale of the country became too big for a small-town government to manage. The rich got obscenely rich by buying up all the farmland, while the average Roman farmer, the guys who actually fought the wars, came home to find their land gone and no jobs available.
Help me! Help me! Nigga!
This created a massive wealth gap. The soldiers stopped being loyal to the idea of Rome and started being loyal to the generals who promised them land and gold. The Republic didn't die overnight. It was slowly dismantled by men who realized that a private army is more powerful than a Senate vote.
You can't talk about Rome without talking about Julius Caesar. He was the ultimate disruptor, but he didn't do it alone. He started his climb by forming a triple threat alliance called the First Triumvirate.
up and then I'm gonna take it down.
It was Caesar, a billionaire named Crassus, and the most famous general in Rome, Pompey. Caesar wasn't just a general, he was a master of public relations and a financial shark. Early in his career, he was so deep in debt that he practically had to conquer the world just to pay off his creditors. He realized to take over Rome, he needed two things: military glory and the undying love of the common people. He spent nearly a decade in Gaul, modern-day France, conquering tribes, sending back glowing reports of his brilliance, and becoming a billionaire by selling captives into slavery. His greatest military flex was the siege of Alesia, where he built a wall to keep the Gauls in, and then built another wall around his own army to keep their reinforcements out. It was peak engineering and peak audacity.
I built this me, brick by brick.
By the time he was done, he had a battle-hardened army that would follow him into a volcano. When the Senate, terrified of his popularity, ordered him to give up his command and come home for a trial,
Do you know who I am?
Caesar made the choice that ended the Republic. He marched his 13th legion across the Rubicon River. In Rome, bringing an army across that river was the ultimate red line.
What's that?
War were declared.
It was an automatic declaration of civil war. Caesar famously said, "The die is cast." Translation, we're all in, and there's no turning back. He chased his rivals across the world, won the war, and returned to Rome as the undisputed boss.
I'm home. You're all my now.
Okay.
He didn't just take power, he reorganized the entire Roman world. He fixed the calendar, gave land to the poor, and made himself dictator for life.
It's me, I'm him, I'm not them. I'm him Jones, I'm him Duncan. I will beat a nigga ass and stomp him in my Timberlands. I've been him, I'ma always be him. I'ma stay him, I'm not them, you understand me?
But here's the problem with being the only main character in a room full of people who think they should be in charge. Jealousy is a powerful motivator. On the Ides of March 44 BC, his inner circle in the Senate, led by Brutus and Cassius, stabbed him 23 times on the Senate floor. They thought they were saving liberty. In reality, they just created a power vacuum that would lead to another 13 years of brutal civil war. After the smoke cleared from the civil wars, one man was left standing: Octavian, Caesar's 18-year-old great-nephew. Everyone underestimated him because he wasn't a great soldier, but he was a genius-level strategist. He teamed up with Caesar's right-hand man, Mark Antony, to hunt down the assassins, and then, of course, he turned on Antony. After defeating Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium, Octavian had no rivals left. He took the name Augustus and became the first actual emperor. But he was smarter than his uncle. He didn't call himself king or dictator. Those words got you stabbed. He called himself the princeps, or first citizen. He kept the Senate around so they felt important, but he held the keys to the army and the treasury. It was the ultimate shadow CEO move. Octavian started the Pax Romana, 200 years of relative stability. This was the era where the Romans became the ultimate engineers. They didn't just build for beauty, they built for efficiency. They created a revolutionary material called Roman concrete that could set underwater.
They used it to build 50,000 miles of paved roads that allowed the army to move faster than any other force on Earth. They built aqueducts that used nothing but gravity to move fresh water over 50 miles into the heart of cities. Rome became a high-tech, high-finance superpower. You could travel from London to Egypt using one currency, one set of laws, and speaking one language. If you played by their rules, life was good. You had running water, heated floors, and imported spices. This wasn't just luck, it was a 200-year masterclass in how to run a world-dominating brand.
So, how do you lose an empire that covers 3 continents and has the best military in history? It wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow-motion car crash that took 300 years. The economic meltdown. Rome's economy was built on expansion. When they stopped conquering new lands, the flow of free gold and labor stopped. But the costs of running the empire, the army, the infrastructure, and the bread and circuses for the poor kept going up. To pay for it, the emperors started a scam called Debasement. They took the silver denarius and started mixing it with cheap copper. At first, nobody noticed, but eventually the silver coin was only 2% silver. That is the definition of hyperinflation. Prices skyrocketed, the middle class was wiped out, and people stopped using money and went back to bartering. The economy turned into a hollow shell. Number 2, the succession nightmare. Rome never figured out a clean way to pick the next leader. There was no oldest son gets the crown rule. This led to a period called the Crisis of the 3rd century. In 50 years, Rome had 26 different emperors. Almost all of them were murdered. Generals would be declared emperor by their troops, march on Rome, kill the current guy, and then get killed themselves 3 months later. It was total chaos, and it left the borders wide open. Number 3, the Great Divorce. Eventually, the empire became so big and broken that one man couldn't run it. An emperor named Diocletian decided to split the empire in 2, the west, centered in Rome, and the east, centered in Constantinople. He thought this would make it easier to manage. In reality, it just meant the rich east stopped caring about the struggling west.
I'm broke, nigga, I'm broke!
By the time the Germanic tribes arrived at the gates of Rome, the empire was already a ghost of its former self. In 476 AD, a general named Odoacer walked into the city, kicked out the last emperor, a teenager ironically named Romulus, and that was it. The lights officially went out in the West. But here's the thing, Rome didn't really die, it just shifted. Their language evolved into Spanish, French, Italian, and Portuguese. Their laws became the basis for Western justice systems and the fundamental concept of innocent until proven guilty. Their architecture, the domes, the arches, and the massive stadiums remains the gold standard for projecting power today.
To this day!
Look at almost any capital city in the world, and you'll see the architectural ghost of Rome in the government buildings. Rome proved that you could build a world-spanning superpower through technology, law, and ruthless organization. They were the original empire, the ultimate cautionary tale of what happens when you ignore your own economy, and the reason we still study history today. They set the bar so high that every superpower since has been trying to clear it. And that's how you Roman Empire for Dummies.
Come on.